Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of his massive warship and watched another world burn. The Eternal Dominion floated in space like a giant crystal, its surface shining with strange lights that moved like living things. Through the wide windows he could see the planet below. What used to be green forests and blue oceans was now nothing but gray ash and glowing scars. "Another easy victory," said his second officer, Kyle Rex. The younger Zephyrian's skin glowed with pride. "The locals gave up after only 6 hours of bombardment." Vexthul nodded but felt no joy. It had been the same story for 3,000 years. The Zephyrian Empire found new worlds, demanded surrender, and when the aliens refused, they destroyed everything that moved. Sometimes the fights lasted minutes, sometimes hours, but they always ended the same way. "How many systems do we control now?" Vexthul asked. 847, Commander, replied the navigation officer. "The High Council wants us to push deeper into unexplored space. They say there might be species out there with technology worth taking." Vexthul looked at the dead world one more time. The Altair system had been home to 6 billion creatures, who looked like giant insects. They had built cities that reached into the clouds and ships that could travel between planets. But when the Zephyrian fleet arrived, their weapons could not even scratch the crystal hulls of the Empire's warships. The Zephyrians had been blessed by the universe itself, or so their priests claimed. Their technology did not follow the same rules as other species. While aliens built machines from metal and circuits, Zephyrians grew their ships from living crystal that could heal itself. While others used crude energy weapons, Zephyrians had learned to bend reality itself to their will. A Zephyrian weapon could make matter simply stop existing. Their shields could turn a star's energy back on itself. Their ships moved through space by folding the distance between 2 points, making journeys that should take years happen in minutes. No species in the galaxy had ever found a way to fight back. Far away, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison sat in a meeting room deep under the surface of Earth. The walls were made of thick metal, and the only light came from screens showing star maps. Around the table sat the most important people in Earth's military. "The reports are getting worse," said Admiral Lisa Harper. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. "They hit the colony on Kepler 442b yesterday. 3 million people, gone in 20 minutes. Jake felt his stomach twist. He had friends on that colony. Good people who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. Now they were nothing but dust floating in space." Dr. Alan Brooks, Earth's top scientist who studied alien life, pushed his glasses up his nose. "I've been looking at the footage from the attacks. Their technology doesn't make sense. It's like they can ignore the basic laws of physics." "What do you mean?" asked General Paul Martinez. "Watch this," Brooks said, pointing to a screen. The footage showed strange ships that looked like they were made of colored glass. When they fired their weapons, enemy ships didn't explode or burn. They just vanished like they had never existed at all. "Our best computers can't figure out how their weapons work. They seem to delete matter from reality itself." Jake stared at the screen. "How do you fight something like that?" "That's what we need to figure out," Admiral Harper said. "Because they're heading this way. Our scouts say the alien fleet is moving toward human space. We have maybe 6 months before they reach our outer colonies." Katie Walsh, the chief engineer for Earth's shipyards, looked up from her tablet. "The new ship is almost ready. The UES Defiance has our best weapons and strongest armor. But compared to what I'm seeing here..." She shook her head. "It's like bringing a stone knife to a laser fight." The room fell quiet. Everyone knew the truth. Humanity had spread to 43 worlds and built a fleet of over 100 warships. They had fought space pirates and settled border disputes with other species, but they had never faced anything like the Zephyrian Empire. "What do we know about them?" Jake asked. Brooks pulled up another file. They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They've been around for at least 3,000 years, maybe longer. They control most of this part of the galaxy. Every species they've met has either joined them willingly or been wiped out. How many ships do they have? We don't know. Our best guess is tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. They've conquered almost 1,000 star systems. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Earth's entire fleet would be lucky to scratch the paint on one of their ships, and they had thousands more where that came from. Admiral Harper stood up. I've called this meeting because Earth Defense Command has made a decision. We're going to fight. Fight? Martinez looked shocked. Admiral, with respect, that's suicide. We should evacuate as many people as possible and try to find somewhere to hide. Hide where? Harper asked. They control most of the galaxy. There's nowhere to run. She looked around the table. Besides, running isn't who we are. Humans don't give up just because the odds are bad. Jake nodded slowly. She was right. Throughout history, humans had faced impossible challenges and found ways to win, sometimes through luck, sometimes through cleverness, but always by refusing to quit. What's the plan? He asked. We make our stand here, in the solar system. Every ship, every weapon, every person who can fight. We show these aliens that Earth doesn't surrender. Brooks was studying his tablet again. There might be something. I need more time to study their technology, but I think I see a pattern in how their weapons work. If I'm right, there might be a way to fight back. How long do you need? Harper asked. Give me a month. Maybe 2. You've got it. The Admiral turned to Jake. Captain Morrison, I'm giving you command of the Defiance. If Brooks finds something, you'll be our test pilot. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The newest, most advanced ship in Earth's fleet, and he would be the one to see if human technology could stand against an empire that had never lost a battle. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Jake stayed behind to look at the star charts. Somewhere out there, alien ships were moving toward Earth. Ships that could make planets disappear and bend the rules of reality. In a few months they would arrive expecting an easy victory. They were about to learn that humans could be very surprising. Ambassador Helen Carter sat in the communication center on Luna Base, staring at the massive screen in front of her. For 3 days, she had been trying to make contact with the alien fleet that was now at the edge of human space. The Zephyrian ships floated just beyond Pluto's orbit, 12 vessels that looked like they were carved from precious stones. Still no response to our standard greeting protocols, reported Lieutenant Danny Clark, the communications officer. We've tried every frequency, every language database we have. Helen rubbed her tired eyes. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years, helping to make peace with 4 different alien species. But those had been neighbors. Species that humans had met through trade and exploration. This was different. These aliens had come to human space uninvited, and the stories from other worlds painted them as conquerors. Try again, she said. Use the mathematical sequences. Basic math should be universal. Danny's fingers moved over his controls. Radio waves carried simple mathematical patterns toward the alien fleet. Prime numbers, basic equations, anything that might show intelligence and peaceful intent. For a moment there was silence. Then the speakers crackled to life. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English. Primitive beings of the 3rd planet, you have been found by the Zephyrian Empire. You have 48 standard hours to surrender. Your worlds, your fleets, and your lives to our rule. Refuse, and you will share the fate of 1,000 other species who thought they could resist. Helen's blood turned to ice. The translation was too perfect, too quick. These aliens had been watching humanity for some time, learning their languages and customs. This wasn't first contact. This was a demand for surrender. "This is Ambassador Helen Carter, speaking for the United Earth Government," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We wish to discuss peaceful relations between our peoples. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits both of our civilizations." The response came immediately. "There is no discussion. There is only submission or death. You have 47 hours and 56 minutes remaining." The signal cut off. Helen stared at the dead screen, her hands shaking slightly. In 20 years of diplomacy, she had never met aliens who refused to even talk. On Earth, President Richard Stone paced back and forth in the Situation Room. The most powerful leaders from every nation sat around the table, their faces grim. Through secure video links, colony governors and military commanders from across human space joined the emergency session. "They won't even negotiate," Stone said. 48 hours to surrender everything, or they destroy us all." General Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. President, we need to start evacuation procedures now. Every civilian transport we can find, every cargo ship. We can move maybe 50 million people before they attack." "To where?" asked the governor of Mars Colony. "You heard what they said. They want all of our worlds. There's nowhere to run." Admiral Harper's image flickered on the main screen from her command ship. "The fleet is taking positions around Earth and Mars. We have 37 ships ready for battle. It's not much, but it's what we have." Dr. Brooks spoke up from his laboratory bunker. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the sensor data from their ships. The energy readings are unlike anything we've ever seen. Each of their vessels puts out more power than our entire planetary grid." "How is that possible?" President Stone asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I think their technology works on principles we don't understand. They're not just more advanced than us. They're using completely different science." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was running final checks on the UES Defiance. The ship hung in Earth's orbital shipyard like a metal shark, bristling with weapons and armor. It was 300 meters long, powered by humanity's most advanced fusion reactors, and armed with rail guns that could punch holes through asteroids. "How are we looking, Katie?" he asked Chief Engineer Katie Walsh over the comm system. "All systems are green, Captain. The new armor plating is installed, and the weapon systems are running at peak efficiency. She's the best ship humanity has ever built." Jake walked through the corridors of his new command. The crew was busy making final preparations. In the armory, Weapons Officer Ben Taylor was checking every missile and energy cell. In engineering, teams of technicians were fine-tuning the engines. Everyone knew what was coming. Lieutenant Commander Nina Rodriguez, Jake's second-in-command, joined him on the bridge. "The crew is ready, sir. Morale is good considering." "Considering we're about to fight aliens who have never lost a battle?" Jake asked. "Considering we're protecting our homes and families," Nina replied. "The crew knows the odds. They're staying anyway." Through the bridge windows, Jake could see other human ships taking their positions. Destroyers, cruisers, and frigates from across human space had answered the call. Some were military vessels with trained crews. Others were converted freighters and mining ships crewed by volunteers who refused to run. On the Zephyrian flagship, Sub-Commander Kyle Rex studied the human fleet through his tactical display. The primitive vessels were arranged in what they probably thought was a battle formation. Their weapons were crude kinetic projectiles and simple energy beams. Their hulls were nothing but metal plates welded together. "They actually think they can fight us," he told his crew, the bridge filled with the musical laughter of his species. "Their largest vessel is barely the size of one of our scout ships. Should we destroy them now?" asked his weapons officer. "No," Kyle Rex said. "Let them see our power first. When their deadline expires, we will demonstrate what happens to those who defy the Empire. Target their largest military installation and prepare a reality disruptor beam." Back on Earth, Helen Carter made one final attempt at communication. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Ambassador Carter. Our government requests a meeting. We have resources and knowledge that could be valuable to your empire. Surely some arrangement can be made. The reply was the same cold voice. 36 hours remain. Prepare for judgment. Dr. Brooks worked frantically in his underground laboratory. The readings from the alien ships showed energy patterns that seemed impossible. Their power sources created fields that twisted space around them. Their weapons worked by changing the fundamental nature of matter itself. It's like they've learned to hack reality, he muttered to his assistant. But every system has rules. Every technology has limits. I just need to find theirs. As the deadline approached, families across human space said their goodbyes. Children were loaded onto evacuation ships heading for the outer colonies. Soldiers kissed their loved ones and reported for duty. In churches, temples, and mosques, people prayed for a miracle. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance as Earth turned slowly below them. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful from orbit. It was hard to believe that in less than 2 days, alien warships might turn it into a dead, gray ball of ash. "Captain," Nina said softly. "Incoming message from Admiral Harper." Put her through. Harper's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than she had just days before. "Jake, I want you to know that whatever happens, Earth is proud of you and your crew. The Defiance represents the best of human engineering and determination. We won't let you down, Admiral. I know you won't." Harper paused. "One more thing. Dr. Brooks thinks he might have found something. A possible weakness in their technology. He's working around the clock to figure out how to exploit it." Jake felt a spark of hope. "What kind of weakness?" "He's not sure yet. Something about resonance frequencies and quantum field disruption. It's way over my head, but he seems excited." The communication ended, and Jake looked out at the enemy fleet. 12 alien ships against 37 human vessels. Ships that could erase matter from existence against weapons that threw chunks of metal really fast. On paper, it wasn't even a contest, but Jake had read his history. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and somehow found ways to win. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans held off 1,000,000 Persian soldiers. At the Alamo, a handful of Texans fought an entire army. During World War II, Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany and refused to give up. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, human stubbornness and ingenuity would find a way to break the unbreakable. The countdown continued. 24 hours until humanity's first real test against an empire that had never known defeat. The 48 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. When the deadline arrived, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the enemy fleet through his tactical display. The 12 Zephyrian ships had moved closer to Earth, their crystal hulls catching the light from the sun and scattering it into rainbow patterns. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Harper," came the voice over the communication system. "The deadline has passed. The enemy has rejected our final diplomatic attempts. All ships are authorized to engage when ready." Sub-Commander Kyle Rex smiled on his bridge as he looked at the pathetic human fleet. 37 ships arranged in what they probably thought was a defensive formation. Their largest vessel was barely 1/10 the size of his smallest cruiser. This would not be a battle. This would be an extermination. "Open fire," he commanded. "Target their military installations first. Show them the price of defiance." The Zephyrian flagship's main weapon charged with a sound like reality tearing. Energy that existed beyond normal physics gathered at the EIE ship's nose, forming a ball of impossible light. When it fired, the beam did not travel through space. It simply made the distance between the ship and its target stop existing. Luna Base, humanity's largest military installation, disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded, simply gone. Where there had been a moon base housing 50,000 people, there was now empty space. The mountain of rock it had been built into was carved away in a perfect sphere, as if someone had used a cosmic ice cream scoop. Jake felt his stomach drop as he watched the readings from Luna Base go dark. 50,000 people, including some of his friends from the academy, were simply not there anymore. No explosion, no debris, no chance to escape. One moment they existed, the next they did not. "Dear God," whispered Nina Rodriguez beside him. "How do you fight something that can do that?" Across the human fleet, similar thoughts ran through every captain's mind. But there was no time to think about the impossible nature of their enemy's weapons. The Zephyrian ships were moving again, targeting Earth's orbital defense platforms. "All ships attack pattern Delta," Admiral Harper commanded. "Close distance and engage with all weapons." The human fleet surged forward. Railguns opened fire, sending streams of metal projectiles at the alien ships. Missile batteries launched everything they had. Energy weapons poured coherent light and particle beams at the crystalline hulls. Every shot bounced off harmlessly. The Zephyrian shields absorbed the kinetic energy of the railgun rounds and redirected it into space. The missiles exploded uselessly against barriers that seemed to be made of hardened space itself. The energy weapons were simply absorbed and fed into the alien ship's power systems. "No effect on target," reported Ben Taylor from the Defiance's weapon station. "Sir, our guns aren't even scratching their paint." A second Zephyrian ship fired its reality disruptor. The human destroyer Wellington, along with its crew of 300, ceased to exist. Then a third alien vessel targeted the cruiser Boston. Another perfect sphere of nothingness appeared in space where the ship had been. Jake watched his tactical display as red markers representing human ships began disappearing one by one. The enemy wasn't even trying hard. They fired slowly, casually, like hunters picking off targets at a shooting gallery. "This is Admiral Harper to all ships," came the strained voice over communications. "Scatter formation. Use hit-and-run tactics. Do not present stationary targets." The human fleet spread out, trying to use their smaller size and greater speed to avoid the alien weapons. Some ships tried hiding behind asteroids or space debris. Others accelerated to maximum velocity, hoping to be too fast to target accurately. It did not matter. The Zephyrian weapons did not need to aim in the traditional sense. They simply chose a target and made it stop existing. Distance, speed, and cover meant nothing when the enemy could ignore the basic rules of physics. The frigate. Dallas vanished. Then the destroyer Phoenix. The converted freighter New Hope, crewed by civilian volunteers, lasted 3 more seconds before it too was erased from reality. In his laboratory bunker on Earth, Dr. Alan Brooks watched the battle through sensor feeds and felt his heart breaking. Good people were dying up there and humanity's best weapons were completely useless. But he had noticed something in the sensor data that gave him a tiny spark of hope. "The energy patterns," he muttered to his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim. "Look at the readings when they fire their weapons." Sarah studied the data streams. "I see power fluctuations in their shield systems. It's tiny, but it's there." "Exactly. Their technology might be beyond our understanding, but it still follows some kind of rules. When they use those reality weapons, it draws power from their defensive systems for just a fraction of a second. But our weapons still can't penetrate their shields even when they're weakened." Brooks pulled up another display. "Not our standard weapons, no. But what if we could hit them with something that works on the same frequency as their shield fluctuations? Something that resonates with their defensive fields instead of just bouncing off. Meanwhile, the battle continued to go badly for humanity. Half the fleet was gone, erased from existence without leaving so much as a debris field behind. The survivors were running out of ammunition, and their weapons had not caused even minor damage to the alien ships. Jake saw the writing on the wall. At this rate, the entire human fleet would be destroyed within the hour, and then the Zephyrians would turn their attention to Earth itself. 8 billion people would follow Luna Base into non-existence. "Captain," Nina said quietly, "maybe we should consider Admiral Harper's withdrawal order." "What withdrawal order?" "She's been signaling for the last 5 minutes, sir. General retreat to the outer system." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was scared but still at their posts, still trying to find some way to hurt the enemy. These people had volunteered to fight impossible odds, and they deserved a captain who would not give up. "Signal the Admiral," he said. "Tell her the Defiance is staying." "Sir, that's suicide." "Maybe. But someone needs to test Dr. Brooks' theories. If there's any chance of finding a weakness in their technology, we need to take it." Dr. Brooks received Jake's message and felt both pride and terror. The Defiance was the most advanced ship in the human fleet, equipped with experimental systems that other vessels lacked. If his theories about resonance frequencies were correct, it was the only ship that might be able to implement his desperate plan. "Sarah, help me calculate the exact frequency patterns we need," he said. "We get one shot at this. If I'm wrong, Captain Morrison and his crew are going to die for nothing." On the Zephyrian flagship, Kyle Rex watched the human fleet scatter and felt a moment of disappointment. He had expected more fight from a species that had spread to multiple star systems. But like all primitive races, they broke and ran when faced with superior technology. "Shall we pursue the fleeing ships?" asked his weapons officer. "Let them run. We will hunt them down later. First, let us deal with their homeworld. Prepare to target the major population centers." Kyle Rex was about to give the order to begin Earth's destruction when his tactical officer spoke up. "Sub-Commander, one of their vessels is approaching us directly." On his display, Kyle Rex could see a single human ship burning toward the Zephyrian formation at maximum acceleration. It was larger than the others, bristling with more weapons and armor. But it was still laughably primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. "Brave fools," Kyle Rex said with amusement. "Very well. We will give them the honor of dying first. Target that ship, but do not destroy it immediately. Let us see what their best efforts can accomplish against the might of the Empire." Jake felt the Defiance shake as the ship pushed its engines beyond safe limits. The distance to the enemy fleet closed rapidly as his vessel charged straight at the alien formation. In the engine room, Katie Walsh watched her instruments with growing concern. "Captain, we're running the reactors at 110%, she reported over the comm. "At this rate, we'll have engine failure in 20 minutes. 20 minutes is all we need," Jake replied. "Ben, are the weapon modifications ready?" "Yes, sir. Dr. Brooks uploaded the new targeting algorithms 5 minutes ago. The railguns are calibrated to fire in the resonance patterns he calculated. But, sir, we only have enough ammunition for maybe 3 full volleys." "Then we better make them count." The Defiance raced toward the alien fleet, a single ship challenging 12 vessels that had never been defeated. To outside observers, it looked like the most hopeless suicide run in military history. But inside the ship, Jake Morrison and his crew prepared to test whether human ingenuity could find a crack in what seemed like perfect technology. The first test of whether an empire that had conquered galaxies could be challenged by a species that had barely learned to leave its home system was about to begin. The UES Defiance screamed through space toward the Zephyrian fleet. Its engines pushed far beyond their design limits. Jake Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship shook from the massive acceleration. Around him, his crew worked frantically. at their stations preparing to test Dr. Brooks's desperate theory against an empire that had never known defeat. Distance to target, 2 million kilometers and closing, reported Nina Rodriguez. Enemy ships are maintaining formation. They don't seem concerned about our approach. On the Zephyrian flagship, Sub-Commander Kyle Rex watched the approaching human vessel with amusement. The primitive ship was moving fast, faster than he had expected such crude technology could manage. But speed meant nothing when faced with weapons that could erase matter from existence. "Shall I destroy them now?" asked his weapons officer. "Not yet," Kyle Rex replied. "Let them get closer. I want to see what their most advanced vessel can do before we add it to our trophy collection." Jake studied his tactical display as the distance closed. The alien ships hung in space like beautiful jewels, their crystal hulls refracting light into spectacular patterns. It was hard to believe that something so beautiful could be so deadly. 1 million kilometers, Nina announced. "We're entering their effective weapon range." "Maintain course," Jake ordered. "Ben, are you ready with the new weapon settings?" "Yes, sir," Ben Taylor replied from the weapons station. "The railguns are loaded with special rounds that Dr. Brooks designed. They're programmed to fire in the exact frequency pattern he calculated. But Captain, I have to warn you, we've never tested this in combat. There's a first time for everything," Jake said. "Katie, how are the engines holding up?" Chief Engineer Katie Walsh's voice crackled over the comm from the engine room. "We're at 115% power now. The containment fields are starting to fluctuate. I can give you maybe 10 more minutes at this rate." Dr. Brooks sat in his underground bunker, watching the sensor feeds from the Defiance. His calculations showed that the Zephyrian shields operated on quantum field manipulation, creating barriers by folding spacetime around their ships. But every time they fired their reality weapons, those fields had to adjust their frequency to channel the massive energy discharge. "The window is only going to last for microseconds," he told his assistant Sarah. "If Captain Morrison can hit them with the right resonance pattern at exactly the right moment, it might disrupt their shield harmonics." "And if you're wrong?" Sarah asked. "Then the Defiance and everyone aboard her will simply cease to exist." The human ship continued its charge toward the alien fleet. In the engine room, warning alarms began to sound as the fusion reactors pushed past all safety limits. Sparks flew from overloaded control panels, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics. 500,000 kilometers, Nina reported. "The lead enemy ship is charging its main weapon." Jake could see it on his display. The Zephyrian flagship's nose was glowing with that impossible light that meant death. In a few seconds, that light would reach out and make the Defiant stop existing, just like it had done to Luna Base and a dozen human ships. "All stop," Jake commanded. "Bring us to a dead drift." "Sir?" Nina looked confused. "Cut the engines. Let momentum carry us forward. I want them to think we've given up." Katie shut down the overloaded engines, and suddenly the ship was quiet except for the hum of life support systems. The Defiance coasted through space on its previous velocity, no longer accelerating but still moving toward the alien fleet at tremendous speed. On the Zephyrian flagship, Kyle Rex frowned at his tactical display. "Their engines have stopped. Are they surrendering?" "Unknown, Sub-Commander, but they are still on a collision course." "How curious. Perhaps they intend to ram us." The idea struck Kyle Rex as amusing. A primitive ship trying to damage superior technology through crude physical impact. "Very well. We shall put them out of their misery." The reality disruptor weapon reached full charge. Energy that existed beyond normal physics gathered at the ship's prow, preparing to reach out and delete the approaching human vessel from existence. "Fire," Kyle Rex commanded. At that exact moment, Jake gave his own order. "Now, Ben, all weapons full salvo." The Defiance's railguns opened fire just as the Zephyrian weapon discharged. The timing had to be perfect, and Dr. Brooks had calculated it, down to the microsecond, as the alien ship channeled enormous energy through its reality weapon. Its defensive shields fluctuated for the tiniest fraction of a second. The human railgun rounds were not ordinary projectiles. Dr. Brooks had designed them with special resonance frequencies built into their metallic structure. When they struck the Zephyrian shields at exactly the right moment, something unexpected happened. Instead of bouncing off harmlessly like every human weapon before them, the rounds began to vibrate in harmony with the alien shield frequency. The quantum fields that protected the Zephyrian ship started to oscillate wildly, creating feedback loops that the alien technology could not compensate for. On the enemy bridge, alarm sounds filled the air for the first time in 1,000 years. "Shield generators are overloading," shouted the defense officer. "The harmonics are causing cascade failures throughout the defensive grid." Kyle Rex stared at his displays in disbelief. The readings made no sense. How could primitive kinetic weapons disrupt quantum field technology? The Defiance's second volley struck the flagship just as its shields completely collapsed. Railgun rounds punched through the crystal hull, sending rainbow fragments spinning through space. For the first time in the Empire's history, a Zephyrian warship had taken damage from an enemy weapon. Impossible, Kyle Rex whispered, but Jake Morrison was not finished. "Third volley now." The final barrage of resonance rounds slammed into the flagship's exposed hull. The crystal structure, designed to channel and redirect energy attacks, was completely vulnerable to simple kinetic impact. Cracks spread across the ship's surface like a spider web. Inside the alien vessel, systems began failing as the carefully grown crystal matrix that formed their technology started to fracture. The quantum field generators that powered their shields went offline. The reality manipulation systems that controlled their weapons shut down. The space-folding drives that moved their ship through impossible distances fell silent. For the first time in 3 millennia, a Zephyrian warship was not just damaged, it was crippled. The other 11 alien ships in the fleet immediately changed course, moving to protect their flagship. But something had changed in the tactical situation. The humans had proven that Zephyrian technology could be hurt. Jake watched his sensors as the enemy ship began to drift. "Did we do it? Did we actually damage them?" "Yes, sir," Ben replied, his voice filled with wonder. "Their energy output is dropping rapidly. I think we knocked out their main power systems." Dr. Brooks was practically dancing in his laboratory. His theory had worked. The Zephyrian technology, for all its apparent magic, followed rules. And once you understood the rules, you could break them. "Sarah, transmit the weapon modification data to every ship in the fleet immediately," he ordered. "And send it to every human colony. Every military base, every ship that can receive it. The frequency patterns, the timing calculations, everything." Admiral Harper received the data stream just as her retreating fleet regrouped near Mars. "All ships, this is Harper. We have new weapon specifications from Dr. Brooks. Begin modifications immediately. We're going back in." Across human space, engineers and technicians began frantically reprogramming weapon systems and modifying ammunition. The data from the Defiance's successful attack spread like wildfire through every human military installation. On the Zephyrian, flagship emergency repair teams worked desperately to restore their failing systems. Kyle Rex stood in the ruins of his bridge, staring at damage that should have been impossible. Crystal fragments crunched under his feet as he tried to understand how his invincible ship had been hurt by primitive aliens. "Sub-Commander," reported his communication officer. "We're receiving a transmission from the High Command. Commander Vexthul demands an immediate report." Kyle Rex felt his confidence crumble. How could he explain this to his superior? How could he admit that the Empire's perfect technology had been defeated by creatures who still used crude metal projectiles? The human ship that had done this impossible thing was still there, drifting in space just a few hundred kilometers away. Its weapons were probably empty now, its engines were clearly damaged. It should have been easy to destroy. But Kyle Rex found himself hesitating. If they could hurt one ship, what else might they be capable of? Jake Morrison looked out at the alien fleet and saw uncertainty in their movements for the first time. The other Zephyrian ships were no longer advancing casually. They were moving cautiously, keeping their distance, clearly unsure how to deal with an enemy that could actually fight back. "Captain," Nina said quietly, "we're receiving multiple signals. From the human fleet, ships are reporting successful weapon modifications. They're asking for orders." Jake smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Tell them to form up for attack. It's time to show these aliens that humans don't give up easily." The tide of battle was about to turn. The empire that had dominated galaxies effortlessly was about to learn that some species refused to be conquered. The space around Earth became a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, their weapons newly modified with Dr. Brooks's resonance frequency data, charged back into combat against an alien empire that was experiencing its first taste of real opposition in 3,000 years. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the surviving human fleet reformed around his crippled ship. The destroyer Cleveland, the cruiser Atlantic, and 15 other vessels that had scattered during the initial assault now returned with their railguns recalibrated and their missile systems reprogrammed. "All ships, this is Admiral Harper," came the voice over communications. "We know their weakness now. Hit them when they fire their main weapons, that's when their shields are vulnerable." Sub-Commander Kyle Rex stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The primitive human vessels that had been fleeing just minutes before were now attacking in coordinated groups. Worse, their crude kinetic weapons were actually damaging his ships. "Evasive maneuvers," he commanded as railgun rounds from the cruiser Atlantic struck his already weakened flagship. The resonance frequencies built into the projectiles caused his remaining shield generators to overload completely. Crystal fragments broke away from the hull as the ancient Zephyrian vessel suffered damage it was never designed to take. The human destroyer Phoenix, one of the ships that had been named to replace a vessel lost earlier in the battle, closed to point-blank range with a Zephyrian cruiser. Captain Lisa Park had read Dr. Brooks' data carefully and timed her attack perfectly. Just as the alien ship fired its reality disruptor weapon at a human frigate, the Phoenix unleashed everything it had. The modified railgun rounds struck the Zephyrian cruiser's fluctuating shields and punched straight through. The beautiful crystal hull cracked and shattered as kinetic energy tore through systems that had never been designed to handle physical impact. For the second time in galactic history, a Zephyrian warship was not just damaged but destroyed. The alien cruiser broke apart in a shower of rainbow fragments, its quantum field generators creating wild distortions in space-time as they failed. The reality weapon that had been charging to fire simply collapsed, its energy dissipating harmlessly into the void. On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Vexthul watched the battle through long-range sensors from his position several light-years away. His advance fleet, which had never failed to conquer a world in the Empire's entire history, was being systematically destroyed by creatures who had barely learned to leave their home system. "This is impossible," he told his bridge crew. "How can primitive kinetics defeat our technology?" His science officer, a nervous young Zephyrian named Tylvan, studied the battle data streaming in from Kyle Rex's fleet. "Commander, it appears that their weapons are somehow synchronized with our shield harmonics. When we discharge our main weapons, our defensive fields fluctuate for microseconds. They have learned to exploit this vulnerability." Vexthul felt something he had never experienced before: fear. not for his own life, but for the future of the Empire itself. If these humans could defeat Zephyrian technology, what would happen when word spread to the 1,000 other species under Imperial rule? The battle continued to rage around Earth. Human ships darted between the larger Zephyrian vessels like wolves attacking giant prey. They would wait for an alien ship to fire its reality weapon, then swarm in during the brief moment when the shields were down. The cruiser Boston targeted a Zephyrian destroyer, timing its attack perfectly as the alien vessel attempted to erase the human frigate Dallas from existence. Modified railgun rounds tore through the destroyer's crystal hull, causing catastrophic failures in its quantum manipulation systems. Jake watched from the Defiance as his species fought back against impossible odds. The human ships were still outgunned and outnumbered, but they had something the Zephyrians had never faced before. An enemy that refused to give up and could actually hurt them. "Captain," Ben Taylor reported from the weapons station, "we're getting ammunition transfers from the supply depot on Ceres. They're manufacturing the modified rounds as fast as they can." "Good," Jake replied. Nina signaled the fleet, "Attack pattern Omega. We're going to finish what we started." The remaining human ships formed up around the Defiance and charged at Kyle Rex's flagship. The sub-commander's vessel was already badly damaged, its crystal hull cracked and several of its weapon systems offline, but it was still the most powerful ship in the alien fleet, and Kyle Rex was determined to make the humans pay for their defiance. "All remaining ships, protect the flagship," he commanded. "These primitives will not survive to see their world burn." The final phase of the battle began as human and Zephyrian ships clashed in close combat. The aliens still had superior firepower and stronger hulls, but they could no longer rely on their shields to protect them. Every time they fired their reality weapons, they became vulnerable to human attack. Katie Walsh worked frantically in the Defiance's engine room, trying to restore power to the ship's damaged systems. "Captain, I've got partial power back online. We can make one more attack run, but after that we're dead in space." "One more run is all we need," Jake replied. He looked at his crew, these brave men and women who had volunteered to face an empire that had never lost a battle. "Nina, set course for the enemy flagship. Full power." The Defiance, battered and barely functional, made one final charge at Kyle Rex's command ship. Behind it came the rest of the human fleet, their modified weapons ready to exploit the weakness that Dr. Brooks had discovered. Kyle Rex watched the approaching human ships and felt the weight of 3,000 years of Zephyrian dominance crashing down around him. His empire had ruled through superior technology and the belief that they were invincible. Now, primitive aliens with metal projectiles were proving that invincibility was just another word for overconfidence. "All weapons target the lead ship," he ordered. "If we're going to die, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." The Zephyrian flagship's remaining reality weapons charged to full power. At the same moment, every human ship in the attacking fleet opened fire with their modified railguns. The timing was perfect, just as Dr. Brooks had calculated. As the alien weapons discharged their reality-bending energy, the flagship's shields fluctuated. The human projectiles, vibrating at precisely the right frequency, punched through the quantum barriers and slammed into the crystal hull. The Eternal Dominion's flagship had survived battles against hundreds of species over the millennia. It had absorbed the energy of stars and redirected the force of exploding planets. But it had never been designed to handle simple kinetic impact from metal projectiles moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The crystal hull shattered, like glass. Quantum field generators overloaded and exploded. Reality manipulation systems collapsed as their carefully grown matrices fractured beyond repair. In seconds, the pride of the Zephyrian fleet was transformed from an invincible warship into a cloud of glittering debris. Sub-Commander Kyle Rex's final transmission was a single word: Impossible. The remaining Zephyrian ships, seeing their flagship destroyed and half their fleet disabled or destroyed, made a decision that no Imperial vessel had made in 3,000 years. They retreated. Jake watched the alien ships accelerate away from Earth, their space-folding drives carrying them back toward the depths of the galaxy. Around him, his crew cheered and embraced each other. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds. "Captain," Nina said, her voice filled with wonder, "we're receiving surrender offers from 3 of the damaged alien ships. They want to negotiate." On his command ship light years away, Commander Vexthul stared at the tactical reports in disbelief. His advance fleet, the force that had never failed to conquer a world, had been defeated by a species that barely understood the basics of interstellar travel. "Send word to the High Council immediately," he commanded. "Tell them that humanity is not to be underestimated. These creatures have found a way to turn our greatest strength into our greatest weakness." But even as he spoke, Vexthul knew that the damage was already done. Word of the defeat would spread throughout the galaxy. Every species that had bowed to Zephyrian might would learn that the Empire could be beaten. The age of effortless dominance was over. Dr. Brooks emerged from his underground bunker to find the streets of Earth filled with celebrating crowds. People were dancing, crying, and embracing strangers as news of the victory spread across the planet. He had given humanity the key to defeating seemingly invincible technology, and they had used it to achieve the impossible. Admiral Harper's voice came over the global communication network. "Citizens of Earth and all human worlds, today we have proven that no empire, no matter how powerful, is truly invincible. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity does not bow to tyrants." Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the wreckage of the battle. The cost had been high. 14 human ships had been lost, along with thousands of brave souls who had refused to surrender. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. "Signal all human colonies," he told Nina. "Send them the weapon modification data and the tactical analysis. Every human ship in space needs to know how to fight these